He bought an RX-2, the radial engine Mazda, that he took back to Carbondale, and I still remember that and talking about why did you get it? Well, because it was the new, it was the latest. I mean, you talk about technocrat, you know, as far as getting the innovations. When I was talking about engineer, he loves the mechanics on them.
It was piston engines go boing, 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 boing. But the Mazda goes and it was because it had that rotary engine.
It put out about 120 horsepower. I remember it would really put you back in the seat. I also remember that after long passes, he'd shift down to third gear. Now this is the first vehicle that we ever had that actually moved. He would pass a long line of rubbernecking cars like in Yellowstone, and as soon as he took his foot off the gas, there would be a horrendous backfire out of that vehicle. And so it'd be pass all the cars, and then he'd take his foot out and go bang. And I always thought the people that we passed would getting really upset at us with our car backfiring or just shooting back at them as after we passed them. I thought that was definitely a punctuation mark to my dad's frustration with rubbernecking RV drivers.
Plus, the size of the Mazda was very small. I mean, there were 5 of us, and this car was built for 4, and we were going across the country with 3 of us in the back, and 3 kids in the back. It was kind of, and it was always a fight for his knees over on my side. You can't get past this line. And that's how it was. And plus it was very warm. There wasn't air conditioned, and Dad didn't like to have the windows rolled down because he wanted to be able to hear the motor.
Just outside of Salt Lake City, Salt Lake having the only other Mazda dealer east of the Rockies, there was no more Mazda dealers beyond that point eastward. So there was no one technical enough to deal with the Wankel engine, or as Dad would say, the Wankel engine. In the high humidity climates, I believe he was getting carburetor icing, and a backflow valve was stuck open, and the fuel pump was continuously working, pumping fuel to the carburetor and then back to the tank. The fuel pump went out once. We took it back to Salt Lake City. We met some very nice truck drivers and tow truck drivers. They said some points were fused or something.
They fixed it, but then it continued to have problems after that on the rest of the way to Illinois. But Dad did get good at taking apart the fuel pump and putting it back together. And we had to do this like about every couple hours when the car would heat up and the fuel pump would go out. And so he'd pull it over on the freeway and we'd get out.
Yeah, I remember some of the conditions. They were trying to repair this fuel pump. They just lay it out on a napkin and disassemble it all and put it back together. The wind would be howling on the plains of the Midwest, and they'd get it back together. They wouldn't lose the parts, and they'd put it back together, and we'd go for another 115 miles or so before we'd have to do it again. He experimented with different fuel pumps when we got to Carbondale, Illinois. I think he put a Volkswagen fuel pump in, and finally, I think he figured out what the problem was, and it was some type of valve sticking open, and he ended up fixing it. But boy, it was a long time, and nobody else knew what the problem was, and Mazdas just weren't going to run east of the Rockies.